3 days after the Trump administration removed protections for transgender patients that banned discrimination in health care, a rollback announced on the 4-year anniversary of the Pulse nightclub shooting, no less. The Supreme Court got it right. They ruled in a 6-3 decision today that employees cannot be discriminated against or fired for being gay, lesbian, or transgender, that they are protected under Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Now, for those interested, it was Justices Alito, Thomas, and Kavanaugh who were on the wrong side of history. But the High Court also punted on the issue of qualified immunity for police officers, refusing to hear any related cases this term, which we'll get to in a minute. On the coronavirus front, the FDA today revoked its emergency authorization of hydroxychloroquine and a related drug. You know, the one that was constantly touted and supposedly taken as a preventative by the president himself. But as the FDA said today, the drug's potential benefits for such use do not outweigh its known and potential risks. Governor Charlie Baker is also urging people who've participated in protests in recent days to get tested for coronavirus at one of the more than 50 new pop-up sites that are offering free testing. That's this Wednesday and Thursday. You can find a list of locations for that online at mass.gov/gettested. And as for those protests, it's unlikely they'll be ending anytime soon, after yet another black man was killed in an altercation with police after he apparently fell asleep in his car in a Wendy's drive-through lane in Atlanta. 27-year-old Rayshard Brooks' death has been ruled a homicide after he was shot twice in the back as he ran away from an officer. Authorities say Brooks was firing a taser he'd taken from the officer as he ran. Today, Brooks' family spoke about what happened, their loss, and the wider issues surrounding police use of force.
How many more protests will it take to ensure that the next victim isn't your cousin, your brother, your uncle, your nephew, your friend, or your companion, so that we can finally end the suffering of police excessive force?
There's no justice that can ever make me feel happy about what's been done. I can never get my husband back. I can never get my best friend. I can never tell my daughter, oh, he's coming to take you skating or swimming lessons. So it's just going to be a long time before I heal. It's going to be a long time before this family heals.
No one walking this green earth expects to be shot and killed like trash in the street for falling asleep in a drive-thru. Rayshard has a family who loves him, who would have gladly came and got him so he could be here with us today.
The officer who fired the shots that killed Rayshard Brooks has been fired. Another one who was there has been placed on administrative duty, and Atlanta's police chief, as you know, has resigned. I'm joined now by former Massachusetts Governor Deval Patrick. Governor, thanks so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Well, I wish the circumstances were different. My condolences to the Brooks family. But didn't one of the speakers put it just right? How many more? When finally is this this nightmare of excess going to end, and when are we going to deal with the underlying issues about the value of Black life, of Black talent, of Black contributions, of Black citizenship? And so my heart is full.
Well, we spoke to you on the radio shortly after George Floyd had been murdered, and obviously prior to this incident in Atlanta. And your position was that this time the reaction was different. But when 2 weeks passes and we watch a video of a police officer shooting a black man running away in the back 2 times, does that not temper your optimism about this movement?
Well, my optimism is based on the consistently peaceful and constructive, or overwhelmingly peaceful and constructive behavior of the marchers, who have stayed out despite the, I think I told you on the radio, our penchant for a short national attention span, who stayed on the streets, exactly, have stayed engaged, who I think more and more are coalescing around a common set of ideas about the way forward. It doesn't mean that the way forward will be easy. It doesn't mean that the work doesn't continue or has been done. I think what is so disheartening is that we just keep seeing these examples of how urgent it is to get on with it, and I just wish they weren't so often examples that ended in death.
When you talk about the way forward, what would be the point where you'd feel comfortable saying, we have achieved what we set out to? What are the things that need to be achieved? What needs to be done?
Well, there's a lot of very fresh thinking about what policing ought to be and what it ought to mean, what that job involves or ought to involve in the 21st century. There's some confrontation of the fact that we have sadly, I think in some ways, very much like teachers, been asking police officers to do things that that sort of pick up the pieces from other things we've just stopped doing, like providing services for people with mental illness, like dealing with chronic poverty and the breakdown of a sense of community, like doing like withdrawing in so many places from support for the public schools. You know, all of these things are connected. Frankly, you know, we've talked about this before. The pandemic has exposed so much of America's unfinished business in every corner of America, and I think we got to be about not just new rules for limiting the use of force by law enforcement, but new rules about how we make equality, opportunity, and fair play meaningful for everyone, everywhere in this country.
Let's talk about fair play for a moment. Most racist encounters, fortunately, don't end up in death. They're like a governor driving down the highway and being stopped by a state cop. That'd be you. They're like Christian Cooper in Central Park, having the cops called on him by Amy Cooper. You know, Andrew Cuomo talks about changing the laws to make a 9/11 call that's motivated by race alone a hate crime. In my opinion, laws aren't going to fix that. There's something else that's got to go on. How do we stop those daily indignities from...
No, I'm sorry, I cut you off.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
I think that in some ways, the focus on law, on law enforcement and police reform and excessive force is important. It is current, but it's not enough. You know, the folks who shot Ahmaud Arbery were not police officers; they were private citizens. I thought the Amy Cooper videotape from Central Park was especially telling, because she knew that by pretending to be threatened by a black man, she could rain hell down on this man. And so, yes, we do need new rules, but we need new behavior. You know, in some ways in America, we've made our uneasy peace with non-discrimination laws, but we've never really made our peace with integration, what it means to live and work and play and love across lines. It's not that it was as it always was. We have made progress. And I, in my own life, have known deep and important and meaningful relationships, trusting relationships across differences. But that is not true of an awful lot of people in this country. And that is not black people's work alone to do. It's everybody's work, and it's work that has to be brought, that we have to bring real urgency to, I think, right now.
You know, I want to go back to hoping that you'll instill some of your, I don't know if optimism is the right word, but let me use it for a moment, in me. A significant chunk of the American people decided a guy who started the birther movement and who in part built his career on discriminating against black people in housing should be the leader of this country. And the percentage of people who seem to think he's doing just a fine job is not dramatically lower than it was before. How do you fix anything in an environment like that when the nation is so divided down the middle?
Well, I still believe in the capacity of people to grow and to learn empathy. I mean, I am convinced that all the racists voted for candidate Trump, but I don't think all the people who voted for him are racist. If it is true that we've come to expect the worst of Republicans at the national level, at least, I think we've also come to expect the minimum of Democrats. And if we're not prepared to offer an alternative, which is not just kind of keeping the lid on, but is actually about bold ideas and solutions and strategies that get to core issues, then we're going to continue to lose races, even to candidates like President Trump. I think that's
is
where
Joe Biden is Joe Biden a man of bold ideas, Governor?
I think Joe Biden may turn out to be, and I say this having been a competitor of hers for a very brief time, that he may be, just as I think President Trump is exactly the opposite of what we need, meaning not just not up to the job, but the opposite of what we need at this moment in our time. Joe Biden might be exactly what we need. His empathy is legendary, and it's real. And I say this after a relationship of 20 plus years with him. And I think that his interest in and curiosity about people, their real experiences, and this point I so often believe is I believe is true, that policy is what matters where it actually touches people. He may be exactly what we need right now. What we need around him are folks who are going to push him from a policy point of view. And I think that's what an awful lot of us are trying to do right now. Would you like to be one of the people around him? I'm around him. I'm advising the campaign. If you're asking about going into the administration, first things first. I would take nothing for granted. First, we have to get him elected. Governor, LeBron James tweeted the other day, everyone's talking about how do we fix this? They say go out and vote. What about asking if how we vote is also structurally racist? And that was right after the Georgia debacle of the other day.
He is so right.
How do you fix that?
He is so right. I mean, we need to be real clear about this. Actually, I'm working on something I'm hoping to publish at the end of the week. This same through line of the, refusing to trust black thinking, black talent, black judgment, and to value black participation applies to a concerted and consistent effort by Republicans. And I say this, as you know, as a Democrat who doesn't think you have to hate Republicans to be a good Democrat. But Republicans have been leading an effort to suppress the vote that ranges from legislative gerrymandering to, purging lists of inactive voters. They even tried a modern version of a poll tax on newly enfranchised voters in Florida. And we see it over and over again. It is imperative that we overwhelm that by participating this time, up and down the ballot. And I urge individual voters to make sure they have a plan for what their vote, how their vote is going to be cast. If they're going to cast it by absentee ballot, to understand what the rules are, get that ballot in plenty of time and get it in well ahead of the deadline. If they're going to show up, bring supplies, make sure they have enough time, some water, maybe a folding chair if that's what it takes. We cannot be intimidated from engaging at a moment when it will take an overwhelming vote to drive a mandate to make the changes we need.
I just hope people won't need the lawn chair. But Deval Patrick, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jim. Good to be with you.
Good to be with you as well.